Bangalore. Good to see both of you over there. All right. Arunima is joining in from Kolkata. Interesting. Kunal from Goa. Fun place. Uh, Charu from Ludhiana. Okay, this is going too fast. I saw Ishika from Nagpur, Atharva from Mumbai. I saw Ritika from Jaipur. I see Dhanraj dialing in from London. Good to see you, Dhanraj. Thank you for joining us today evening or afternoon for you. I see Karan from Mumbai. I see someone from Indore, Chennai, Varanasi. So quite literally across the country and also outside of India as well. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining in and thank you for being so punctual. Those of you who are already here, it's great to see that punctuality and seeing people turning up for a session, a topic which can be serious at times, but extremely relevant in today's day and age. So we are going to talk about that topic, which is ethics in management. But we will come to that shortly. We will do introductions, get into the conversation in a brief. But before we do that, I want to run the first poll of the evening for today. I am going to show it on the screen right now, which is right here on your screen as of now. So hi Abhishek, hi Aditi. So good to see all of you joining in. The first poll for the evening is live. You can see it on your screen right now. The question is, which year do you aim to start your MBA education, right? You have come into a session which is presented or facilitated by Witzel. So it's amongst the top business schools, emerging business schools in India as of now. So I'm sure a lot of you have the MBA plans in the periphery. You are looking to do it at some point in the future, I'm assuming. So please let us know the year in which you aim to start your MBA education. Okay. I have around 80 responses. I'm going to keep this open for another 10 to 15 seconds. Those of you who have just, and the audience count is going up. I see more and more people joining it. So those of you who have just joined us through the poll on your screen, please let us know the year in which you aim to start your MBA education. Hi, Gurneet from Navi Mumbai. Hi, Mubina from Mumbai. Good to see all of you. I see Ibadat from Chandigarh. So good to see all of you. As I said, the first poll of the evening is live. It's on your screens right now. So let us know the year in which you aim to start your MBA education. I'm going to keep this open for another 2 seconds, touch the 100 count, and then I'm going to stop this poll. Okay. And I'm going to share the results very, very quickly for our panelists. So around 24% of the audience are looking to start their MBA this year. This is going to be extremely relevant for the second poll that I'm going to run later today in the evening. So stay back for that. We would want to see your responses for that second poll as well. It's very relevant to this question, this poll that I've run so far. Around 28% are looking to start next year, so 2023. I'm assuming you would be in this phase of starting your preparation for the CAT, GMAT, or GRE, or one of the other management aptitude tests. So again, the poll would be relevant to you as well. The next one. And then 6% are 2024. And a good 42% are undecided as of now. So they don't have clarity. And hopefully this session would give them clarity or enough information to help them make up their mind. With that, let me formally kickstart this session. We have around 260 people in the audience right now. And I think this is the perfect time to actually do the formal introductions. So today's session is being hosted by Seed Global Education, which is what I represent. I am a co-founder and director at Seed Global Education. We are a higher education management and consulting firm where we work with the top universities from around the world to connect candidates like yourself with those universities, give you a chance to experience the teaching, interact with the faculty, understand the school's career services, financing options, the whole opportunity that the university offers for candidates like yourself. We facilitate such interactions as we are doing with today's masterclass. In today's masterclass, we are interacting with BITSOM, which is the BITS Pilani School of Management based in Mumbai. It had its first intake last year, so 2021. And did I get that correct, Sampurna, or did I mess that up? I got it correct. Okay. So had the first intake in 2021, and now they are open. They are accepting applications for their next intake, which is in 2022, which is later this year. We are going to hear from Sampurna, who is the manager of admissions with BITSOM. She's going to tell us a little bit about the school, about the unique offering that the school has, and the unique value proposition that the school offers with the BITS legacy and the backing of the Aditya Birla Group. Post that, once we have heard from her for the next 7 to 10 minutes, we are going to hear from Professor Morgen Witzel, who is a fellow at the Exeter Center for Leadership at the University of Exeter Business School in the United Kingdom. He's taught at business schools around the world. He's taught in France, he's taught in Netherlands, he's taught in Slovenia, He's done work with McKinsey in India. He's written over 30 books which have been published by Bloomsbury, including The Ethical Leader, which is considered to be the guiding book or the book to go to for a lot of business leaders across the world. He was formerly a columnist and an editorial board member of The Smart Manager, which is published out of Mumbai, and he was there from 2002 to 2020. He teaches ethics in management at Witzel. And this topic, a lot of our audience is young, you're like fresh graduates or still in final year of college, and may not really completely, or this would be my belief, they may not completely understand the importance of ethics in today's world or in the world of business, how it's extremely, extremely critical for business leaders of tomorrow and today to give importance to ethics. We have seen a lot of failures over the last decade or so. We have seen scandals at Goldman Sachs. We have seen issues happen at McKinsey, the top management over there. We saw the Satyam scandal around a decade ago. We have, of course, seen the United Breweries, Mr. Vijay Mallya, Nirav Modi, those scandals happen. And ethics is extremely, extremely important in today's world, and especially in the world of business when you're holding a leadership position. So we are going to hear about this topic from Professor Morgen Witzel in a bit. But as I said, let's first understand a little more about the BIT School of Management. And with that, let me hand it over to Sampurna.
Thank you so much, Sanjay. Thank you for that lovely introduction. Welcome to everyone for joining in today. I'll just quickly share my screen and take you through, what the BITSOM MBA is all about. So this is, as Sanjay mentioned, our intake for the class of 2024, which starts in July 2022, is currently open. So what is the BITSOM MBA? It is a degree, it's an MBA degree. It's full-time, residential, spans over 2 years, and based in Mumbai. Currently, we are located in our city campus in Hiranandani Pavai, and we'll take you through what the campus looks like in a bit. What is it that really differentiates BITSOM? And to be honest, hands down, all our students and aspirants talk about our faculty, our rockstar faculty, as we call them, who are curated from all over the world. So while, we obviously have Dr. Ranjan Banerjee as our dean and Dr. Leena Chatterjee as our full-time faculty, we have a brilliant lineup of visiting faculty. And today you get a chance to, interact with one of them, which is Professor Morgen today, and get a glimpse into what a classroom experience and the quality of education that is on offer at BITSOM. Next up is the MBA degree is what we say is more of an ultimate degree. People are unlikely to go back to school after you've already done an MBA unless you want to follow it up with a PhD. So in that case, it's really important that it sets you up for your leadership journey, for your whole entire career, and not just the immediate placement you land after the MBA. And hence, in addition to the 70+ courses and 5 specializations on offer, which is the core management subjects, as well as the winning at the workplace module that we call, which emphasizes on EQ, EI, as well as things like whole brain thinking, presentation skills, persuasive skills, writing, and all sorts of things which are extremely important for you to really do well in your careers. And that's like a whole module that works alongside your core management courses here at BITSOM. What else is kind of unique about our program is that at the moment we're looking at recruiting not more than 150 for the next few years. And currently we have 139 in our founding class. And hence that means we can really, give you that individual attention. So starting with the personal development plan that each of you build with Dr. Leena Chatterjee, mapping where you come from, what you're going through, and where you want to end up. And then obviously, there's a mentorship program where you are mapped with an industry mentor, an industry leader who largely they are BITS Pilani alums, who take you under their wing in one-on-one mentorship sessions. And that is a relationship that you build, and you get to learn a lot, like things like how do you navigate politics at the workplace. Like a lot of things are, while we try and cover a lot, there's still some things that can only come from sort of knowledge that is transferred from people that have lived through those experiences, and that's what you get here. There's a whole entire placement readiness program that is in addition to the classroom hours. It's beyond the classroom, where we prepare you for your interviews and the case study preps and all of that, so that you do well, not only during in the curriculum, but as well as set you up for success in your careers. We have a collaboration with the London Business School, which means each one of our students are eligible to go for a 2-week immersion at the London Business School in year 2. A little bit about the courses. So in the core courses, you study all of the management courses that are listed here in year 1. And in year 2, there are 5 specializations on offer. Again, a differentiator is that given that we're a new school, we were able to kind of, build a curriculum that really sort of speaks for the need that is there in industry today. So it's a beautiful kind of mix of what academia has to offer in order to meet the industry needs. And hence you see the names of the specializations listed on your screen. It's a dual specialization program, which means that you get to pick subjects from at least 2 of these specializations listed here. If you want to take a look at what these subjects are like and kind of do a little bit more deep dive, go to our website on the program section. All of these subjects are listed, and you'll be able to kind of get into a little bit about what each and every subject seems to be talking about. So one of the bigger things that everybody that comes and does an MBA is looking for is career support. What is my placements going to be like? So unlike most a lot of schools in India where it's largely student driven, we have a full-time professional career support team that is run by professionals who not only go out and get industry partnerships in terms of your not only for opportunities for internships and final placements, but also for live projects. So here we have 3 live projects, 1 social sector and couple of corporate live projects, where you get to work in groups of 4 or 5 with your peers and solve a real world problem that a corporate sort of gives you, and you work on it and you present to them the solution. So that's also there, and that's what the career services team does. We've just concluded our summer internship placements for the founding class in December last year. The placement report is up on our website. You please go take a look at it. This is just a glimpse of the kind of companies that came and recruited our students in year 1. Talking about the campus, it's a 50,000 square foot campus at Hiranandani Knowledge Park in Powai, which is our city campus at the moment. We intend to move to Kalyan, to the 60-acre campus towards the beginning of 2024. This is our founding class. The second picture is with Professor Ziv Katlan when he came to India and taught the class in person. And this is just a glimpse of what the class profile looks like. It's 35% women. You can take a look at the numbers of the median scores of the entrance tests that we accept, the GMAT, GRE, and the CAT. Mind you, these are just median scores. It means that we have people with scores above and below them as well. Just to give you an idea, we really focus on building a diverse class, and hence not only the gender ratio, but also our the background, the academic background is about 67% engineers versus 33% non-engineers. And the work experience also, as you can see, we have about 24% of our students who are freshers, and then we have the most number of people in the less than 2 to 4 years of experience. Next is, what is the application process like? It's rather simple. Go on the website, hit apply now. You'll see the application form. It's free to start an application. So, fill it out. There are a lot of sections. We encourage you to take about 2 to 3 days to kind of fill it out, write your application well. Once you submit it, then the process is that we review your application. You're either shortlisted or not for the interview, and we ourselves let you know either way. And you go through a personal interview if you're shortlisted, and the committee takes a call, and you get an offer. That's how it typically works. The components of the application form are given below. We really encourage you to hit that button and check out the form for yourself. In terms of funding and scholarships, the program fees is about 24.5 lakh Indian rupees for 2 years, which is payable in 2 installments. We have tie-ups with all of these banks: the State Bank of India, Axis Bank, ICICI, and HDFC, and we have a bunch of scholarships available as well. If you're looking for the NEET cum merit-based scholarship, then you're encouraged to fill out an extra essay on the form. There are a lot of, so you can read up on our FAQ section as well, and on the fees and financing section on the website. The details are all given. You'll find more details on this there. Finally, our applications for round 3 are now open, and the deadline is 20th of March 2022. Admissions offers have already started rolling out for those that applied in round 1. Interviews are also going on. And as you apply in this current round, you will, hear from us in the month of April on the shortlist. So those of you that haven't yet taken your GMAT or GRE, you can take it within the next 3 weeks and submit your scores as well by the 20th of March. The program begins from the 4th of July. And this is our, contact details. You can take a screenshot. I will also share it on the chat for all of you. All the very best. Over to Professor Morgen, but before that, Sanjay, to introduce Professor. All the very best, and we really hope that you enjoy the class that we have for you today with Professor, because that's really a glimpse into what it is like to be in Witzel. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Sapurna. Thank you for that introduction to Witzel. I'm sure the audience is curious to know more about the school, about the program. By the way, to the audience, I've been to their campus in Powai. It's just beautiful. It's in a nice commercial building, really fancy infrastructure, really fancy classrooms, and a place to study for sure. Very interestingly, we have 489 participants in this webinar right now, so really huge turnout. And it's extremely good to see the interest in today's topic on ethics and management from the audience, right? A young crowd really caring about ethics. It's extremely promising and motivating to see this interest. So with that, I have already done a detailed introduction for Professor Morgen Witzel. I am going to post my introduction in the chat as well. So those of you who missed my introduction earlier can read a little bit more about him as well through the introduction that I'm going to post. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Professor Witzel to take us through this presentation on ethics in management. Over to you, Professor.
Thank you very much, Sanjay, and thank you also, Sampurna. I have a short presentation to run through with all of you, which I'm going to put up now, and I'm going to share a screen. While I'm sharing screen, I can't actually see you. So if we have any questions, there's time built in for questions and answers at the end. So what I'd like to do is just run through this now and give you a sort of feel for the subject itself and for some of the things that we will be discussing in the course of the class, if or hopefully when you come to join us at Witzel. So as Sanjay said earlier, there are a lot of things around us that are going on. He mentioned some examples like Goldman Sachs. We could mention others like Barclays Bank or Credit Suisse, which seems to have been dogged by a series of scandals. The latest one only recently, when they've been accused yet again of money laundering, of very seriously unethical behavior, of taking in money from people with very suspect pasts. And the damage that this has done in terms of trust in the financial services industry is immense. The financial damage as well. One single American bank, JP Morgan, has paid more than $100 billion in fines over the course of the last 15 years. It's a colossal figure, isn't it? $100 billion, and that's just one company out of many in the financial services industry. We look around and we can see others too. Volkswagen, one of the most trusted names in the automotive industry, and yet it turns out that they're cheating on, or were cheating on, the emissions that their diesel automobiles were producing at a time when we're all trying to cut emissions in order to deal with the climate emergency. Here's Volkswagen actually cheating on that rule, and it's expelling its cars, expanding many, many more times the number of particulates than they should do. So literally poisoning the environment. We know that this causes immense harm to people's health. The COVID pandemic, we know that the fatalities were highest in areas where there were highest air pollution, and one of the big contributors to air pollution was diesel emissions. BP, the oil company, and its oil rig at the Deepwater Horizon in the Gulf of Mexico, which in 2010 exploded, killed 14 people, dumped millions of gallons of crude oil into the Gulf of Mexico, poisoning marine life, immense damage to the environment. BP again paid something like $40 billion in terms of fines and compensation in order to clean up. Satyam Computer Services, Sanjay mentioned them, and one perhaps the most high-profile internationally of the issues that have come out of India, but a company that was overstating its profits and ignoring the fact that it was about to go bankrupt. And only when it was too late did anyone else outside the company actually realize the true situation of its finances. All of these things have immense costs to society. We end up paying for these, you see, that's the problem. We, the ordinary person, ends up paying in terms of higher prices, of the sort of compensation costs, and of course the damage that's done to our own lives. If you sell a car or another product that is going to be harmful to someone's health, you're putting them and their health and their lives at risk. If you're forcing your employees to work in conditions that are not safe, you're putting them and their health and their lives at risk. And when the company goes bankrupt due to financial mismanagement, that means that customers are deprived of services, governments are deprived of tax revenues, and employees are deprived of their livelihood, which can sometimes mean the loss of everything they have, loss even of their home. But we don't have to accept this. The argument I hear quite often is, well, this is just the way the world is. Corruption exists. This is what we have to deal with. So there's no choice. We may as well just accept that this is the way the world works. But no, we don't. We really do not have to accept that. We are, all of us as individuals, we are all free agents. And we all have a choice. We can all make that choice. Indeed, this is one of the few choices, perhaps in some walks of life, that we can make. We can decide whether we're going to be moral agents or not. We can't pay anybody else to make that decision for us. We have to make it ourselves. Are we going to become part of the problem, or are we going to become part of the solution? And there's a real imperative, I think, to take this issue very seriously, because Samparna mentioned earlier, she was talking about what industry needs most. One of the things industry needs most is trust. Indeed, that's true of all of society. One of the things that society needs most is trust. If you look at the world around us, it is incredibly turbulent. There's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of information asymmetry, people not knowing enough in order to make informed decisions about things that are really crucial to their own lives. And all of us are looking for something or someone whom we can trust. Because with trust comes certainty, with trust comes hope, with trust comes the belief that we can actually live happy, peaceful, and prosperous lives. If there is an absence of trust, it becomes very difficult to do those things. Our need for trust is such that sometimes we allow ourselves to be taken advantage of. Sometimes we make the wrong decisions, we trust the wrong people. And we make those mistakes, but we shouldn't let those mistakes sour us against the need for trust. We need to keep looking. And for most people, that is exactly what they do. Even if they do have a bad experience, they will move on and try to find somewhere else that they can find trust. They will try and find some sort of safe haven where trust exists. And that's something businesses need to recognize, that people are looking for trust. People want to be able to trust the companies that they do business with. They want to be able to trust the companies they work for. And my argument in my book, The Ethical Leader, and in this course and throughout much of my working life, is that this is an imperative for business to understand this. If we behave ethically towards people, we can gain their trust and we can build strong and enduring relationships, which are good for the business itself. We need trust. We need to be able to trust people around us. It's a psychological need. It's also a physiological need. We are looking for safe places, all of us. We need places where we can feel safe. Now, we like a little bit of stress sometimes, so that means we might go out and do extreme sports or do things that would challenge us physically and mentally. And that's fine, but we need to know that there's a safe place we can fall back on. We need to know that if we go into sort of extreme sports or even something like paintball games or something that involves a certain amount of danger, that when we stop the game, there's a safe place waiting for us. We need what is called psychological safety. There's a lot of work has been done on this by an American professor named Amy Edmondson, who talks a lot about this need for psychological safety. Because when we have psychological safety, then we open up. And then we'll talk to people, and then we'll share things with people. If we're in a workplace, for example, and we don't trust the people around us, then we're not going to open up and share with them. We won't necessarily share what we know for the good of the rest of the organization. We'll stay quiet, and we'll just let everything go on around us. We won't participate. We won't become truly part of the team if we don't trust the people around us. So creating that sense of psychological safety is absolutely paramount. And how do we create that? How do we create that safe place for people? Well, we demonstrate that we can be trusted, and we demonstrate that we can be trusted by behaving in an ethical manner. What does that actually mean, behaving in an ethical manner? A large part of it is about being fair to other people. It's about treating other people as we would want them to treat us. It's about treating them with respect and with dignity as fellow human beings. It sounds rather simple, but actually that's all it really comes down to in many cases. Ethical behavior simply comes down to fairness, respect, and dignity. If we do this, if we achieve that place of psychological safety, we know too that there's a physiological reaction. There are hormones in our brains like oxytocin and dopamine, which when we feel safe, those are released, those are triggered in larger quantities. And it gives us a sensation of pleasure. We feel happy when other people are behaving towards us in an ethical manner. We also get that same pleasure by behaving ethically towards them. It's a reciprocal process, a two-way process. If we're both behaving in that way, then you get double the effect, you get double the pleasure, if you like. If there is no trust, if there is a lack of trust, a lack of psychological safety, then the levels of those hormones decrease and we feel unhappy and fearful. And because our brains are programmed to make us happy, we seek these things out. That's the basic psychology, that's the basic psychology and the basic neurochemistry that goes on in order to create trust. So what does being ethical do? What happens if you are an ethical business? What happens if you treat your employees really well? You treat them fairly, you pay them properly, you give them good benefits. You make sure that you treat them with respect and dignity and fairness. Well, what happens is that when the employees know that they can trust their company, they become more engaged with that company. They become more interested in it. They want to work there. Working there becomes a positive experience for them. One of the things that we've known now for a very long time have been studies done on this all over the world for about 100 years now about workplace behavior and what motivates people in the workplace. One of the things that we know from these studies is that when you ask people to rank the factors that motivate them, money is never the topmost factor. It might be second or third or fourth in priority, but the top factor is nearly always satisfaction and engagement with the job. Am I doing work which is meaningful to me? Am I doing work for an employer that I can trust? And if people feel that they can trust their employer, they will be much more willing to work for you. They'll be much more willing to stay in the job. They'll be much more committed, and they may not even want to be paid as much. I know of many cases of people who've taken jobs that were less well paid in order to get the satisfaction from a trusted employer. Years ago, I was writing a book about the Tata Group, and I spoke to a young person who had recently joined as a manager, just come out of a business school. And they confided in me that they'd been offered a similar job for another Indian business organization for 30% more money. And they had turned that down to go to work for Tata. And I said, why would you turn down 30% more money? And the person said to me, because when I walk into a room and I tell people that I work for Tata, I become 6 inches taller. Not literally 6 inches taller, but they grow in respect that other people have for them because of the fact that they're working for a trusted company. So that's the first stage. The second stage is you have people who are committed to the organization. They share its values. They trust the organization because they know that it's an ethical organization. What do? They work harder. They are more productive, and they're more likely to engage in innovation. Organizations, companies with high levels of ethical behavior are very often also very innovative organizations. They may not make the big splashy headlines like someone like Google, for example, or Apple, but they are nonetheless quietly innovative. They get on with innovating because they do it all the time, every day. What that means is that they're delivering then a superior service, a superior product to their customers, and customers notice this. And customers know too that they can trust the organization. They can trust its products and its services, and they can trust the people they work for it. That leads in turn to customer loyalty. Customers are more likely to stay with a company if they trust its products, its services, and its people. And loyalty really matters because, again, there is good research that shows that it takes about 4 times as much money to acquire a customer as it does to service an existing one. So repeat business is far more profitable than if you have to go out and get new customers every time. So if you're constantly annoying your customers, you're driving them away because your behavior is not ethical and not fair, it's costing you much more to them to replace those customers every time. So repeat business is the way to business success. That in turn creates value. It creates profit. It creates return on investment. One of the most profound things I think I've ever heard is again by somebody at the Tata Group, Mr. Gopalakrishnan, who was the deputy chair for a number of years. And he expressed it this way. He said, profit is a byproduct of what we do. So our view is that we create value. We provide goods and services to the community. And out of that provision of goods and services comes our profit. And that's the way the cycle works. The more ethical you are, the more engaged your employees are, the more innovative and better quality of service they provide, the greater levels of customer loyalty you receive, and the more value you create. So if you're looking to return value to shareholders, or if you're looking to create social value, it doesn't matter. The motivation here is just the same. So my argument to you then is, ethics isn't something you add on to a business. When we talked about all those failures earlier, the reason why they failed is because they didn't think ethics mattered. They thought all that mattered was profit. Actually, ethics is what matters, because out of ethics comes profit if you're also running an effective and efficient company. Ethics needs to be at the heart of every business model. It needs to be at the heart of every strategy. And during the course that I'm teaching at Witzel, I'm going to be showing you how that works. Okay, we'll actually go through the stages of how you develop an ethical business model that puts ethics at the heart of the business strategy and will give you a better chance of becoming more profitable. And again, there's plenty of data around this. I was looking at an article just the other day, too late to include in this presentation, which showed what would have happened if you had invested $1, or sorry, it showed you what would happen if you'd invested $1,000 in companies that specifically say that they're not interested in social causes or the environment or any other ethical issues. If you'd invested $1,000 in the year 2000, you'd have $14,000 now. But if you'd taken, and that sounds pretty good, doesn't it? A return of 14 to 1. But if you'd taken that same $1,000 and invested it in companies that do care about social causes, that do care about the environment, that are specifically ethical in their approach, you would now have almost $30,000. So nearly 30 to 1 return. This is not, these are not trivial numbers. There is real profit to be made in doing business in an ethical and positive manner. Part of that comes down to reputation. Again, I mentioned the young person who'd gone to work for Tata. Well, the reason that they derive that sort of value to them is because Tata has that very strong reputation as a trusted organization. And that doesn't mean they don't make mistakes. Everybody does. Every company does. But on the whole, by and large, they are a very trusted organization. when you have that kind of strong reputation, and I can think of other companies around the world too, in the United States and Britain and Japan, for whom the same thing applies. You have those what you have with a really good reputation is you then have strong relationships with all of your key stakeholder groups. You've got customers who want to come and buy your products. You've got employees who want to come and work for you. You've got society at large, which supports you, so that when something does go wrong, people don't turn against you and say that your company should be fined or broken up or whatever. People are willing to give you the benefit of the doubt if you make a mistake. Reputation is built on trust, and trust in turn is built on ethical behavior. Everything comes back to ethics in the end. Everything is built on a foundation that says, I am going to be an ethically strong person. I am going to make decisions that are morally right. And I'm going to do these in a way that is going to benefit my company and to benefit society at large. Reputations are extremely fragile. And one of the things about ethics too is it's not something you do once, okay? You make a commitment that says that I'm going to be an ethical and moral person. I'm going to make these decisions. I'm going to build a strong reputation. But you can very, very easily lose that reputation. There's a famous quote from Benjamin Franklin. It takes 20 years to make a reputation and 10 minutes to lose one. In fact, sometimes it doesn't even take that. The gentleman on the right is a British entrepreneur named Gerald Ratner. And Mr. Ratner founded, well, he and his father had founded a jewelry store in London. And over the course of time, Ratner built that up to a very, very large multinational business. They own 10,000 stores in Britain, in Europe, and in North America. Ratner did something which had proven to be very difficult for any British company before that, as he really cracked the American market. He had something like 2,000 stores in America. British retailers traditionally don't do very well in North America, but he did. He succeeded. And he was regarded as a hero, and the prime minister invited him to lunch, and he went around the country making speeches about the key to success in business. And his key to success was just profit. That's all he really cared about, was being really efficient and making a profit. And he didn't treat his customers fairly. He sneered at his customers. He thought they were stupid. He thought they were ignorant and they had no taste. And he made jokes about them. Some of the jokes can't be repeated because they're quite rude, but one that can be is he compared. He said, well, what he actually said was, how can we sell a pair of earrings for less than the price of a sandwich? And he said, it's easy. The sandwich will last longer. So he's admitting that he's selling really poor quality products to his customers. Even though he's selling them quite cheaply, he's still selling them garbage, basically, that's going to fall apart very quickly. And his customers found out about this. He made a speech on television in which he told this joke. And his customers heard about it. And they stopped coming to his shops. They stopped buying. And his share price value started to fall. And 10 months later, that company went into liquidation. 10,000 jewelry stores, and in less than a year, they'd gone into liquidation because of a joke that took him about 30 seconds to tell. So ethical behavior is not something that you just do once. As I say, it's a journey. It's not a destination. It's something we have to be constantly aware of, our own sort of ethical issues and how we deal with them. And sometimes it means we have to make some really, really hard decisions. Some of you may remember the case of Tata Finance, which went bankrupt in 2004. And it was another division of the Tata Group. And Tata had decided to set up a personal banking house, retail banking arm, but it had no prior experience in this field. So the group hired two very experienced finance professionals to be a chief executive and chief financial officer of this new group, Tata Finance. In 2004, the auditors went in to sign off on the books, which is common practice. Every year you have external auditors who come in and look at your accounts and then certify that they are true and correct. And in this case, the auditors refused to certify that Tata Finance's accounts were true and correct. And this caused a great deal of problems. And the auditing firm eventually sent in two more auditors who did certify the accounts as being true and correct. But by this point, the headquarters of Tata Group had become very alarmed. And they actually informed the regulator themselves that there was something wrong here. And the regulators went in and said, yes, there was. There was a black hole in finances. Nobody knew how much, but hundreds of millions of dollars, crores and crores of rupees were missing. And the police were called in and they arrested the chief executive officer and the chief finance officer on charges of fraud. They were put in prison. And the press then began to turn against Tata. They said, well, look, all this time we thought that Tata was this wonderful company that was really honorable and trustworthy. And now we see they're just as greedy as the rest. And they began to put a lot of pressure on. But almost immediately, Mr. Ratan Tata called a press conference at which he made a really astonishing announcement. He said, every rupee that has been lost will be repaid. Every single person who lost money at Tata Finance will get that money back. I've seen and read about many banking crashes, many times when banks went down, when they became bankrupt. And I have never yet heard anyone make that pledge. So I interviewed Mr. Tata in about 4 years later in 2008. And I asked him the question. I said, why did you do that? Well, I asked him first, I said, when you made that pledge to the public, did you know how much money had been lost? Did you know how much money was missing? And he said, no, I didn't. He said, I would have liquidated all of the assets of the Tata Group. I would have sent the entire group, I'll put the entire group up for sale if I had to. But I was determined we were going to pay that money back. And he said, when I made that pledge, I thought I was prepared for that. I thought we might well have to do that. So I then asked him the next obvious question, which was why? Why would you liquidate the entire group and all that history, all that tradition? And he said, because of reputation. If we had not done this, no one would ever have trusted us again. And all that reputation, which we spent nearly a century building up, he said all of that, or a century and a half, I should say, I beg your pardon. He said all of that would have been lost. He said, without trust, there is nothing. Everything gets thrown away. And so you have to do the ethically right thing, even if it takes a lot of courage. And courage is also another thing they don't teach you very much in business schools, but it's really important. And we'll be talking about that too in the module, is making sure that you do have the courage to do the right thing, which is what Mr. Tata did. Being ethical can be really hard. There are different schools of thought around ethics. There's one version, for example, which is the ethics of duty, that you always do the right thing. Those of you who have read the Bhagavad Gita will be aware of this, because that's basically what the story is about. We have that famous dialogue between King Arjuna and his chariot driver, who is in fact, of course, is the Lord Krishna. And Arjuna knows what he has to do. He has to go and fight. But he knows that when he goes and fights, he's going to be up against his family, his friends, and he's going to have to kill them. And he doesn't like that thought. He really hates the idea that he might have to kill family and friends. And he's quite sad about this. And he says as much to the Lord Krishna. And Krishna says to him, but you have to do this. This is your duty. That is what comes of being a king. You accepted that responsibility. Now you have to carry it out. But that's only one way of looking at ethics. There's another way too, which is called consequentialism, and that's an ethics of outcome. What about the benefit that there will be to other people? What if you do the right thing? What if you do your duty, but that actually causes harm to people, to innocent people perhaps? Or what if you do the wrong thing by your duty, but that has positive outcomes for other people? Where does that leave you? There is an issue there for police forces. I do a lot of work with police forces in Britain, and I sit on the ethics committee for one of our police forces in the UK. And what often comes up are issues around what is the duty of a police officer? Is it to prevent people from coming to harm? Is it to prevent people from being hurt? Or is it to enforce the law? And most of the time, those are the same thing. What you do to enforce the law also prevents people from coming to harm. But every so often, that's not the case. Every so often, something that you do to enforce the law is going to mean that someone innocent is going to get hurt. And then what do you do as a police officer? How do you then react? Those are the kinds of decisions that we have to try and make. And who decides anyway? Who gets to choose what is right and wrong? Is there a duty imposed on us from above? Is it something that comes from religion or faith, or is there a form of natural law that tells us what is right and wrong? And who gets to decide what is good and what is bad? Very often those choices are made for us. What is good for us and what is bad for us? When we're children, those choices are made for us by our parents. As we grow older, they're made for us by our teachers, by our bosses, by our politicians. Actually, in the end, we have to make those choices ourselves. We have to decide what we're going to do, how we are going to interpret our own duty, and how we're going to decide what consequences we want to be. We have to make those decisions. Like I said earlier, you can't outsource ethics. You can't pay someone else to be ethical for you. Here's an example of a kind of a case study or dilemma that we would discuss in class. And I won't discuss it with you today, partly because there's well over 400 of you, but partly too because there isn't time. But this is a sort of issue that we would get into in class, and we take a lot of time to sit and discuss this and think about the implications. You may well recognize this. This is a tea plantation in the hills of northern India. And a number of years ago, some of these plantations came under attack from guerrilla forces, probably related to the Naxal movement. And some of the plantation houses were burned, some workers were beaten up. I think 4 people were kidnapped and held hostage, held to ransom. And the terrorists then approached the tea plantation owners and said, we will go away and leave you in peace, provided you pay us some money. We want you to pay us a certain sum of money, and we will then not attack your plantations anymore. You and your people will all be safe. So the tea plantation owners approached the local government and said, can we do this? Will you allow us to do this? And the government said, absolutely not. Having any kind of negotiation or paying money to terrorists is a criminal offense. And if you do this, you will be imprisoned and fined and possibly even lose your plantations. And so the plantation owners then said, well, but then what about sending us some more protection? Will you send us more police? Will you send the army to help protect our plantations? And the government said, absolutely not. We have no resources. We can't do this. So you're on your own. And the plantation owners then apparently seemingly had 2 choices. Do you break the law and pay the guerrillas to go away so as to save your people and your plantations? Or do you obey the law and watch while the guerrillas come back and attack you and kill your people and burn your houses down? Now, what would you do in that situation? If you were one of those tea plantation owners, what would you do? I won't tell you the answer, partly because there isn't really a single answer, but partly because that's the kind of thing you would discuss when you come into class. What are some of the things that we talk about? Well, as I've just said, we'll be talking about issues around ethical theory. And there's the two that I just mentioned, the ethics of right and wrong, and the ethics of good and bad, but there's other things too. There's a school of thought called virtue ethics, which is that we cultivate virtues within ourselves. We cultivate qualities within ourselves that will help us to understand what is required and make the right decisions. There's another theory called pragmatism, which includes a concept known as the moral ecology, which means whenever you're in a situation, you need to look around and find out what all the moral choices are. And maybe what you thought was just simple binary, yes or no, good or bad, right or wrong. Actually, there may be other options there that you can identify as well. We'll talk about ethical paradoxes, the cases where there's no apparent answer, where no matter what you do, right or wrong, good or bad, someone's going to suffer. How do you deal with these when they come? How do you make the best decision that you can possibly make in the circumstances? What approaches do you take? We'll talk about stakeholder theory. Who's affected by the operations of the business? Who has a stake in the running of that business? How do we treat all of those different stakeholders ethically and fairly? We'll look at some ethical decision-making tools, because this is really important. It's one thing to just sit and discuss all of these things and to talk about the potential for it, but we need to understand better how we make ethical decisions. So we'll go through several different sets of ethical decision-making tools, and we'll see how they work and give you some practice, some case studies to work on so that you can practice making those decisions. And then so that when you're in a real life situation, when something comes up, you'll have those tools ready to hand that you can use. And we'll relate that then to how ethics creates value. When you're making an ethical decision, you're not just solving a problem or deciding what to do there and then. You're building something, you're creating something, you're creating trust, you're creating reputation, and through trust and reputation, you're creating value. So that, in summary, is what this module, what this course is about. And I'm really pleased that Witzel have chosen to include this in the curriculum. I think it's a great, obvious step forward in terms of how we help the business leaders of the future develop and become more rounded people with a greater understanding of what leadership is. It's not just balance sheets. It's not just profit and loss. Those things are important, but purpose and morality and ethics are important too, because those are the backbone of any business. Every business needs trust. From trust comes value, and from value comes business success. Okay, I'm going to end there, and I'm going to hand over, I think it's to Sanjay, to see if there are any questions.
That's right. This is extremely insightful and extremely useful information and what we discussed today. I'm going to encourage the audience to ask the questions in the Q&A box. This would really help us moderate the conversation and pick up the relevant questions to us to Professor Witzel. But in the meanwhile, while you post your questions in the Q&A box, I do see some questions have come in. My request to others would be to post their questions in the Q&A box as well, so that we can pick the right ones to ask him. In the meanwhile, I'm going to run our second poll for the evening. It is going to be live on your screens right now, which is asking you, have you taken or are you currently preparing for the CAT, GMAT, or GRE? So have you taken one of the tests? Have you taken the CAT, GMAT, or GRE? Are you planning to take one of the tests soon? So if you're planning to take it, let's say 2022 or early 2023, then you can say that you're planning to take one of the tests soon. And if you currently don't have any plans or you're still undecided about pursuing management education, then put that, choose the third option, that you don't have any plans to take a management aptitude test as of now. I'm going to keep this poll open for another 15 seconds. So if you haven't yet responded, please do so. It gives us a perspective of what state in your MBA journey that you are in right now. I remember from our first poll that around 24% of the audience were looking to start their MBA within this year. They were looking to start their MBA within 2022. So if that would have been the case, you should have either taken the test by now, or you should be planning to take the test very soon. Those of you who are not looking to start in 2022, maybe you haven't yet planned your GMAT, GRE, or CAT yet. So you can choose the third option and let us know that you haven't yet made up any plans to take a management aptitude test. Those of you who have responded to the poll already, I see 92, 93 responses have come in already. So if you have already responded to the poll, you can post your questions for Professor Morgen in the Q&A box, and I will pick up the relevant questions to ask him. You can also upvote questions posted by others. This way, I get to know which are questions which are relevant to you, and I pick up the most relevant, most upvoted questions to ask him. With that, I'm going to end this poll and share the results for a quick moment. And yep, you can see the results on your screen now. Around 11% have already taken the CAT, GMAT, or GRE. So we have around 400 respondents in the room right now. So around 43 have taken the test already. Another 36% are possibly preparing for one of the tests and planning to take one of the tests very soon. And the remaining 53% don't have any plans as of now. Hopefully, after this session, you get inspired and motivated enough to start your preparation and start preparing for your application in 2023 or 2024. So great. Thank you for your responses. Thank you for sharing your status as of now. With that, I'm going to go to the Q&A box and pick up the relevant questions to ask Professor Witzel. I would also pin him, add him to the spotlight. Let me do that. And I'm also going to invite Sampurna to join us for this Q&A so that she can take up any questions relating to admission, applying to Witzel, or any queries that you may have about getting a scholarship, financial aid, and any other questions that you may have about Witzel. So I'm going to make this as a panel now, and I'm going to pick up our first question. So Professor Witzel, this is a question which is coming from Anadi Vatsa. Uh, the question is around AI, ethics in artificial intelligence. I know it's an evolving field. There's a lot of uncertainty around artificial intelligence as of now, but any opinion that you may have about the importance of ethics in AI and how feasible it is? Is it really possible to get a machine to understand ethics? And if yes, how do you remove biases which the programmers or the people who build the full system have? How do you avoid for those biases when you talk about ethics in artificial intelligence?
It's a very important question. The short answer is yes, it is absolutely essential that we have ethics in AI. At the moment, moves in that direction are very tentative, to say the least, but it is absolutely important. We know that the algorithms on which AI is based can themselves be subject to bias. There's a very large and growing body of research on this now in the United States and in Europe as well, about the bias that can be built into AI. And it can do things like, for example, it can bias police forces towards behaving more repressively in some neighborhoods than in others, because they assume that everybody in a particular neighborhood might be a criminal. It has biases in terms of healthcare provision. Some areas become more, some areas receive more healthcare than others simply because of the way that the AI that designs the provision systems are built. Can AI itself become ethical? That's a big question at the moment. And at the moment, at the state of development of AI, the answer is probably no. There was a very good article about a month or two ago in Britain, in which scientists took an AI machine to a debating society called the Oxford Union. And there was a motion was put for debate. It said, can AI ever be ethical? And they asked the AI to answer this. And the AI gave them two answers. One of which is, yes, of course AI is ethical. We're built to be ethical. We're programmed to be ethical. And the other answer was, well, no, of course AI is not ethical. It can't be ethical because it's only a machine. So the ethics of AI has to go into the design, and the ethics has to be built into those algorithms. And the primary test for those algorithms is, do they treat everyone fairly? Do they treat everyone equally? And the answer very often is not, because of the human beings who design the algorithms. Their own bias creeps in. So we need to develop a system, first of all, for making sure that those algorithms are designed with fairness in mind. But secondly, I think we need some tests to make sure that any AI that is produced is behaving and operating in a fair manner. I don't know the answer to how you do either of those things because I'm not a mathematician, unfortunately. But certainly this is a very much a live topic, and it's something which really requires a lot of thinking about as we go forward. But very good question, Anna.
Thank you. So thank you, Anadi. Thank you for asking that question. Extremely pertinent, extremely relevant in today's age where technology is evolving at possibly the fastest pace in the history that we've seen so far. And you're talking about how to bring ethics into AI is, I think, keeping a lot of the thought leaders in the space awake at night and wondering how do they manage the whole thing as it evolves. So thank you for asking that question. Professor Morgen, we do have a question from Aditya as well, which is about ethics in social media landscape, right? Mm-hmm. Social media allows anonymity. You can post whatever you want. There are scandals created at times which may not really be true. There's fake news. And this is something which is, there's news of political parties having this whole army of posters, bots responding for them. So how do you manage ethics in the social media landscape? How do you take care of, how do you make sure that clean, sensible information is being made accessible to people and it's not creating biases? We saw this with the Facebook Cambridge Analytica case a couple of years ago. There's still topics around your Mark Zuckerberg was asked to turn up and testify in front of the Indian Parliament. He was asked to testify in front of the US Congress as well. So how do you talk about ethics in the social media landscape?
Interestingly, Aditya, I think the answer is very similar to the one about AI. It needs to be designed into the system from the beginning. And the system needs to be designed in such a way that the people are going to be treated fairly and with respect and dignity. And it's I fear that for probably the majority of social media platforms, it's too late for that now because the damage has already been done. And I'm afraid, yeah, you mentioned the very pertinent case of Facebook and Cambridge Analytica. To some extent, I wonder whether the people who are in charge of social media platforms themselves have a sufficient moral compass in order to understand what is going on here. Whether you can actually introduce an element of ethical behavior into social media now, it would have to come from a combination of very tight regulation and self-policing by people who use social media. I don't see any of those happening anytime soon, I'm afraid. And I have to say, I'm not a huge engager with social media, partly for that reason. I think there are some real moral issues out there about the way people are treated, about the way women are treated, for example, on social media, about the way sports people are treated. You miss a goal in football, and suddenly 10,000 people are writing to you and threatening to kill you and threatening your family. The politicians are getting this as a standard feature now as well. And the only answer for some of them is to disengage, to get away from this completely, and to not engage with the abuse that is coming their way. And sometimes that actually does relate back to a theme that we will be talking about in the module, is what do you do in these sorts of situations? Can you always stand up and fight? Can you always stand up and correct the situation and say, no, I'm going to make this, I'm going to change this. This is something that's wrong in front of me. This is something that's unethical in front of me. Sadly, I think sometimes the only answer is to exit, to get away from whatever this problem is. You don't solve that problem, but at least you're no longer being damaged by it. And yourself and your own reputation are things you have to protect too. So Aditya, I'm sorry, I wish I had a better answer for you, but unfortunately, I think this is a case where the genie is out of the bottle.
Thank you for sharing that perspective. I don't have any questions coming in from the audience about the ethics topic, but I want to bring in Sampurna over here and talk a little more about Witzel. Sampurna, you did speak about the faculty model. You spoke about how Professor Morgen Witzel teaches ethics over there. And in your presentation, I believe you're also shown some of the other visiting faculty. If you're comfortable, can you share your screen once more and share that with the audience? Some of them may have dialed in a little later. So I studied at a business school which followed a similar visiting faculty model. And I think that was the biggest takeaway. It was amazing to learn from stalwarts in the academic domain coming and teaching you under one roof from across the world. So it was something which I really, really liked about the business school I studied at. And consequently, I really want the audience to get a taste of the faculty which teaches at Witzel as well. So those of you who missed this during the presentation earlier, here are some of the visiting faculty at Witzel on your screen right now. Some of them actually taught me as well. They were visiting faculty at the business school I studied at as well, which is the Indian School of Business, ISB. And I remember Raj Raghunathan. He's known as the happiness professor. He's got a course on Coursera, which is on happiness, which is extremely, extremely popular. I'm guessing it's multiple million people have taken that course so far around the world. So really great over there. Shamika Ravi taught me. She teaches at ISB, so she taught economics, statistics at that time. Professor Louis Martins taught me as well. In fact, we are doing a webinar with him next week, which is on the 5th of March. Sorry, next Saturday, we are doing a session with him at 11 a.m., which is the 5th of March. So those of you who are looking to get a taste of his teaching, you can attend that as well. He's talking about how to tackle, how to lead change in the 21st century. So how to tackle change, the evolving uncertainty that comes with change in the 21st century. So he's doing that on the 5th of March at 11 a.m. You can find the link for that session on our social media handles. So I know Professor Morgen spoke about social media being very difficult to control and ethics, very difficult to manage ethics over there. But we do have social media handles. So if you want to check out, register for that session, you can do it. Do that on Seed's social media handles. Professor Mark Finn taught me as well. He teaches at Kellogg and he was a visiting faculty at ISB at that time. He was the area leader for accounting at ISB as well for some time. And amazing professors over there. I think I'm missing Professor Piyush Kumar over here. Sampurna, he's
Yes,
also.
this is just a representative slide. So the exhaustive, database is available on our website. And just as, Sanjay just mentioned, it is, it's quite fortunate that we've been able to, collaborate with the professors that we have here at Witzel. The classes started in July. So a large number of them have already taught. So Professor Raj has taught a couple of times. He has taught 2 subjects. So the first one, he actually teaches the happiness course in term 1 as you begin your journey here at Bitsam, and then he comes back to teach the consumer behavior course a little later. Of course, and as you can see, so Professor Shamitra Datta, for instance, he's just taken over as the Dean of Side Business School at the University of Oxford. And Professor Gerard George, he was in India. In fact, he came down and he taught our students. And just to give you an understanding, our classes are offline now. So we do have in-person classes, if that's something that's on your mind. We were just talking to Professor Morgen. He's himself coming down towards the end of next month in March. So we do have faculty coming in to the classroom from all around the world and taking the classes with you, and you get that in-person interaction with them as well.
That's great to hear. And as I was saying, right, some of them have taught me as well and extremely impressed. One person who's not mentioned that I was talking about, Professor Piyush Kumar over here. He teaches a course in marketing services. Is that the case at Bitsom as well?
Yes, he teaches marketing towards the beginning of the year, right up top, around block 2 or 3.
Okay, so of course, all of them are amazing in what they teach, but Professor Piyush Kumar, I would call out over here as well, because his course on marketing services was just mind-blowing. I took it way back in 2012. It's been 10 years now, or a decade, and I still remember the case studies that he took over there, and it was just mind-blowing completely. So extremely stellar faculty over here. Sampurna, one thing which I want to talk about and ask you over here. See, there's a handful of our audience who are looking to apply and start their program within this year. You are in your round 3 deadline now. Is that correct? So March 20 is the round 3.
Yes.
How many, very candidly, how many spots do you have available? Is it too risky to apply in round 3? Or are you still okay? Would you still encourage these people to apply this year rather than waiting for the next year?
Absolutely, go ahead and apply. So while we have the total class size is 150, and the only thing that happens, to be honest, is that if you apply early on, then you get early decisions. You have better visibility on where your candidature is at a little earlier in the day than not. Having said that, yes, seats do tend to go away. We do release offers, but see, we wouldn't have done a third round if we just to get applications and not release offers and not process them, right? So that's on us. Be rest assured that there are obviously seats available, and we will be giving offers, and there's really nothing to sort of worry about. If you're good, if you put your best foot forward in the application, and if you want to have a conversation with us, I've shared the links as well. You can talk to our counselors, you can book a slots with one of us, myself or some of my colleagues, and we will have a conversation with you on how to build the application to the best possible way. And and please go ahead and apply. If you're good, you will make it in any round. And I believe in kind of living in the moment. At this point in time, if you still haven't applied, you still have the opportunity to do so. So just go for it. You don't have to sort of worry about it.
All right. So one perspective that I would bring in as an ex-admissions person, and I've worked with a couple of business schools in admissions, what the schools would generally do is have certain number of spots available for each round, and applications are usually proportionate to that. So whether you apply in round 1 or round 2 or round 3, your chances of securing an admission don't change, because the number of spots kind of kept as a buffer or as a backup for each round is proportionate to the number of applications expected in that round, kind of thing. So your chances don't really change massively whether you apply in round 1 or round 3. So if you are looking to start your program in 2022 and Witzel is one of the schools that you're looking at, you can still submit your application by March 20. So that option is still there. Sampurna, one thing which we didn't touch upon, and Professor Witzel, I do have a question from the audience that has come in for you. So I do want to take that up. But I just want to wrap up the thing about admissions at the school with my final question to Sampurna over here. The housing, right? So classes are in person. I know classes are happening at the Mumbai campus, as I said, beautiful place. Where do the students stay when they are in Mumbai?
Yes, so for the incoming class, housing is going to be about 700 meters from campus. It's going to be, it's fully furnished accommodations. Each individual will have their own rooms and their own washrooms. So it's actually coming closer to campus. So, and both years, the first years and the second years, will be living together under the same sort of building. So it's sort of walking to campus, and it's world class. It's as in, the best facilities that you can have, and it's fully furnished, all appliances provided. So really nothing, you just have to get your bags, your clothes, your books, and your laptop, and that's about it.
And housekeeping is covered as well?
As of now, at the moment where our students are at, there it's covered. We will reveal more information. We'll share that. So we share all of these informations as we release offers to students, and you'll get to know all of the nitty-gritties as well.
Final question to you: can I apply as well and do a second MBA? The experience was brilliant. The housing, the housekeeping, and the faculty. I am surely tempted to go in for a second MBA as well now. But with that, on a lighter note, Professor Morgen, I do have a question coming from Aditya. He's talking about that you have touched upon this topic of ethics and duty and the consequence of ethics. But if you would be able to share more insight on how do we handle ethical dilemmas, right? There are so many challenges, so many factors to consider. Or if I can rephrase this question slightly, right, and rebuild on this question, we have seen a lot of the top names in the industry fail when it comes to ethics. We saw that, I would not want to take names. We were discussing some of those people before we started the session, but we saw some really top tier industrialists, people who had built a great reputation in the world of business, not just in India, around the world, fail when it came to ethics, right? We saw something happen at ICICI Bank a couple of years ago. We saw something at McKinsey. We have seen things happen at Goldman Sachs very recently. And these were people, all of these people had top tier management education as well. They studied at some of the best business schools in the world and possibly took courses in ethics as well at that time. How do leaders keep reiterating or rebuilding this ethical approach in themselves when there are so many temptations, so many distractions, so many challenges? And how do you handle these ethical dilemmas in the future?
Sorry about that. I just realized I was muted. Yeah, I mean, it's a really important question. The answer, I think, is to continue to look at why some of those people do get into those positions, those top industrialists, those top leaders that you talk about. Why do they end up making those kinds of mistakes or behaving in those ways? What leads them to it? There's some very good research has been done on this just recently here at Exeter, where I'm based, suggesting that the answer is because people very often are sleepwalking across the line into unethical behavior, very often without even realizing they're doing so. When we see people behaving unethically, we often think, oh, well, they're just greedy or they're just selfish. Well, but actually, it turns out that greed and selfishness are not really the biggest motivators. The biggest motivators are often things like fear or the pressure that we put on ourselves or the pressure that other people put on us. Very often, if you see an organization where there is a high level of unethical behavior, it's very often linked to things like a target-driven culture or a goal-driven culture, where people are under pressure to perform. It doesn't matter how you get there, you have to hit the target. The thing that leaders can do is, at least this is my argument, is first of all, to develop more of a sense of humility, I think. It's not really about us as leaders. It's about the people around us. They're the ones who create the value. They're the ones who drive the organization forward. We have a duty of care towards them, and we have to realize that fundamental responsibility that we have towards our fellow human beings, a responsibility that is amplified greatly once we're in a position of leadership. So we need to understand that responsibility and then keep reminding ourselves of that all the time. The other thing that's important for a leader to do is to surround yourself with a group of people who will challenge you and who will question you. And when it looks like you might be doing something which is unethical, they will step in. The case I mentioned earlier about the man who destroyed his jewelry store empire by making jokes about and offending his customers. He was surrounded by people who all said, "Oh, your jokes are really funny. Tell some of your jokes. Everybody loves your jokes." If anyone has stood up and said, "Don't tell a joke. Your jokes are in poor taste. You should not be telling those in public," he might still have that business empire today. You need those people around you who you can trust to challenge you, and they can also trust you to know that they can challenge you safely. That's another aspect of that culture of psychological safety. So yeah, be humble and put yourself up there where people can challenge you. I think is key to that.
That's fair, and that's extremely sane advice. You having worked in the industry for over a decade. One thing which I had noticed or used to be very surprised about, leaders surrounding themselves with yes men, right? Or a coterie who just never go against them. And even if there was some resistance, or even if there were some people who would be naysayers, those people would not survive in the organization. So the saying yes culture is at times very dominated. It used to be very dominating as well in a lot of countries and a lot of companies. And this is extremely valid point that you keep yourself humble, allow people to disagree with you without any risk, without any hesitation. And possibly that's one of the great ways to keep yourself grounded and connected with those ethics as well. So extremely great advice and extremely sane advice to our audience who possibly could be leaders of the future. So thank you for doing this. We are over time. We are actually significantly over time, over the scheduled time. So with that, I want to wrap up this session. It's been extremely, extremely insightful and relevant and useful to me, to the audience, to attend and interact with both of you. Thank you, Professor Witzel. Thank you for taking out the time to do this. Thank you, Sampurna. Thank you for telling us more about Witzel, the wonderful faculty that you have. And in fact, facilitating this session with Professor Witzel, right? It's a great testament to the kind of faculty you attract as a school, as an institution. And thank you for making all of this possible. Thank you to both of you. And thank you to our audience as well. Thank you for being patient, hearing about this extremely sensitive and important topic. And I hope you found it insightful and useful and got a great chance to interact with the professor and know more about Witzel as well. So thank you to all of you. Thank you again. Have a good evening, all of you.
Thank you, Sanjay. Thank you so much, Professor. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.